Welcome back to Education Matters. Did you correctly answer C? The percentage of computer scientists who are women has dropped from 37% in 1995 to just 24% today. And according to an organization called Girls Who Code, which does a lot of great work around promoting computer science, this figure will drop even further to 22% unless we do more to encourage students to take computer science classes. So we're going to continue our conversation with Lieutenant Governor Dan Forest now, and I know that's something you've been interested in too.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time working on this as well. It was actually a surprise to me to discover there was a very small handful of teachers around the state that were actually prepared to teach computer science. I'd go into schools like you do and I'd ask these computer science teachers, I say, well, you teach computer science, what do you teach? And oftentimes the answer would be things like, well, we teach Microsoft Word and PowerPoint and keyboarding, and that's not computer science. And we know this kind of world of computer science is blowing up. There are about $1.5 billion worth of jobs on the market right now in North Carolina for computer science, and we're not even training our students in junior high and high school for computer science. So we're proposing legislation right now that would ramp that up really quickly within a few years to be able to have computer science in every classroom. So one part of the problem that you're facing with the statistic that you just showed is there are students that don't even know anything about coding. They may get to college before they even discover what that's about. So now we're seeing in some of our classes, we're in elementary school, we're starting to teach basic rudimentary coding to students. Apple's got a really good program, and Code.org does. And so we're working with folks like Code.org and Apple and the Friday Institute to put this together so we can introduce it to all classrooms.
Great. Well, I want to get back to where we ended up before the commercial break. I'm going to push back a little bit to say that public schools aren't being held accountable. I mean, the A to F school grading system, and it's funny you mentioned that you said we should identify the schools that aren't doing well and drive additional resources. That's been my beef with the A to F school grading from the beginning, is that it basically slaps an F on schools that I think shows more about the poverty level than it does the quality of the school. But then doesn't drive anything to help them.
I agree. No, I completely agree. I think that you have to, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and just keep slapping an F on there every year, and you're right, you can follow the F schools. They're in primarily high poverty, Black or Hispanic districts across the state. I mean, you can
It's easy, save some money on the A to F school grading system by just
using here's probably where they're going to be, right? And so I think that's shameful. We've done this for decades, and this is not a new thing just because you put A's to F's on them. You could not put anything on them, and the problem is still there. I think we need to have a rapid response team on these things. Once a school is failing these students year after year, we need to do something different, right? We need to turn the model upside down, turn it on its head. I think we need to innovate. We need to invent. We need to create new models for education. I don't think there's anything you can do wrong, right? At this point in time, it's already being done. So we have historical, generational failing of students in these areas, and we need to do something rapid.
Well, let me, speaking of sort of innovation in public schools, now, I think most observers who watch you and hear you speak would say that you're a consistent conservative on your positions. I mean, so the issue of local control of schools, I mean, our public schools, the General Assembly and the law set, they tell them when they can start, when they have to stop, how many hours they have to be in the class, what curriculum they can use. Now they're telling them how many students per grade have to be in certain things. That doesn't seem to me to be a conservative way to look at how public schools should be managed.
And I don't really align with any of those things. I've been very public on all these things before. I think we need to, again, allow we need to hold our superintendents and our principals accountable, and then we need to allow them to have more leverage and freedom, right? Whether that's the calendar flexibility or how big your class size is.
So you don't think do you think we should have calendar flexibility, class size mandate?
Yeah,
not a supporter of that?
I'm not a supporter of class size mandate. I've been public about that too. I think that depends on the individual class. It depends on the teacher. It depends on the school. It depends on the demographics of the students. There's a lot of things it depends on, right? So it's not a one size fits all, and we tend to have this broad brush one size fits all approach to education across the board, and I think that needs to go out the window. And we were having this conversation before about teacher pay. I think we should block grant money down to our local districts, give the principal a bucket of money to be able to decide how he wants to fund his teachers in his classroom. And if he or she wants to give a teacher $100,000 to teach in a classroom, great. I don't have any problem with that at all. Allow that flexibility for the best teachers out there to be able to make the most and to be able to teach and train those other teachers around them, and then hold that principal accountable.
Now, but I mentioned about the accountability. I said public schools are being really held accountable. There are definitely some gaps in how we sort of oversee things like the opportunity scholarships. I mean, we've reported on this show the largest voucher school in the state, Trinity Christian, at least the highest percentage of dollars, $2 million. And they've got a teacher who was embezzling money, he's serving time in jail. You've got more than 65% of their whole budget comes from the state, yet very minimal stuff. Like basically, here's a sort of a basic financial reporting. There's no testing, there's no accountability. Do you think that's
Well,
I think we have
a legal system that should tighten that up. I think auditing process. A lot of people will say, well, charter schools aren't accountable. They go through far more audits than anybody else out there.
There's a big difference in public charters accountability and the voucher program.
Yeah, but you can make this same argument across the board, right? We could say, well, you have a teacher in a traditional public school somewhere that's done something wrong, and then you paint a broad brush across the entire program. This is one teacher in one school that's done this, right? That should be dealt with, and that school should be dealt with, and there should be a consequence to that. Obviously, these are dollars that are the people's dollars that are going there, but that's one instance, right? So you see this in the homeschool movement. Some horrible thing happens with some crazy homeschool family somewhere, and this broad brush gets painted across homeschooling, and that's not fair. So
we do that on a lot of issues, though, don't we?
We do
on the right and the left.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We do, and it's just not fair. I think we need to spend more time getting to the heart of all these issues, and if there is a problem, part of the purpose of government is that oversight, right? We want to make sure that things are fair and equitable, and make sure that we are protecting and using taxpayers' money the best way we can. But when it comes to opportunity scholarships, you have the poorest of the poor students in your state that are able to take these dollars and perhaps get out of a failing school and go to one that their parents deems is better for their needs right now. Why would we not do that? I think it's sad to say, sorry, parent, you have no choice but to send your kids to a failing school. We're not going to give you this opportunity. So I think more opportunities are better, and I think more flexibility and innovation in this system of how we educate now. If we were going to completely start an education system now, we didn't have one, it wouldn't look like what we have right now. So, the real question to ask, I think, people across the board is, what are we fearful of? We have a system of education that works well in some places. Let's repeat those things. Let's build a model and do those things more. Right. And then we have places that aren't doing well for students. Let's scrap that system and figure out a better way to do it. Right. In this day and age, we can do that.
Gotcha. One thing I think about when I think about the public school system in general, and I've mentioned on the show, I think that the public school system itself is sort of an important part of the community fabric in society. You talk about what makes America great, what makes North Carolina great. I've heard you talk about founding fathers. Are you concerned that if we start moving down this path of all sort of homeschooling, private school, private options, that we're going to lose something that is really one of the few places, in my opinion, that people still come together, black, white, brown, rich, poor, and that we're going to kind of balkanize things? Is that you think there's any fear in that?
I think a lot of that's already happened in America. Regardless of the schools, the way we live life has changed completely over when things were just a community, right? People drive home now from work and they drive into their garage and they close their garage and they stay in their house all day. People don't even know their neighbors. You talk about a Parkland school shooting issue. Here's a young man that was extremely troubled. 30 years ago when I was a kid growing up, the kids all up and down the street, there were parents that would notice this kid was having problems, and that would be addressed maybe even by the neighborhood, not necessarily the whole community, right? And so a lot of those things are out the window. So yeah, certainly I'm a big fan of community-based things. I love small town America. I love the energy and the vibrancy that exists in small towns that doesn't even exist in what we consider our most vibrant cities. So so that there's obviously a concern there. I think that making sure that we are providing the best form of education for every student in this day and age just looks different than it used to.
Right.
It's not the same as it was. It's not just about the knowledge transfer like it used to be. We have to go to school to get knowledge. You have all the knowledge in the world right in your smartphone now. So it's a different model.
Right, I understand. All right, last question. would you like to make some news today right here on Education Matters and go ahead and announce your candidacy for governor in 2020? You've been
No, I would not, Keith, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that.
Well, look, I really appreciate it. I enjoyed our conversation today. Look forward to seeing where we can work together on some things like on advancing digital learning and those things. And really appreciate your time.
Thank you
Thanks
for
so
having me
much.
on.
Yes,
Look forward
sir.
to the next time.
All righty, thanks.